that we have. What I think is interesting or really cool, I guess, about being able to work specifically in the healthcare industry, whether I'm working with nurses or doctors or students or even patient experience folks, is that there is an underlying self-reflective issue that I think we all need to get to, that actually diversity trainings have messed up. And what I mean by that is that bad diversity trainings have, at least in my experience, told me that I am never, ever, ever, ever supposed to make judgments and assumptions. Just out of curiosity, I'm assuming y'all have probably also heard similar things, that you're not supposed to be making judgments and assumptions. And what is weird is that is not only just terrible advice, but it is also not how we function. So listening to Tom and listening to the stories before of the two other folks who were doing great work in a different location, that's when I came in. What is fascinating is we make judgments and assumptions always so that we feel safe and prepared when interacting with someone else. So as soon as you enter a patient's room or as soon as you open a curtain, you have to determine what is going on and then determine, do you need help? Do you know how to do this? Do you know what's going on? And then that information kind of plinkos through your lived experience, and then you can determine what to do. So it's not making the judgments and assumptions that is always terrible, or at least limiting in your relationships, but it's what you do with them. And because so many of us have been to so many different trainings where we're supposed to be judgment-free and a complete clean slate every single time, what happens is that you're then not allowed to use your own lived experience as a resource when it works. And you're also not practicing being self-reflective about, oh, wait, this is like an old practiced habit that I need to work on. So that's what we're going to spend time doing today. What I love about this particular activity, and I hope we can do this, I could do this all the time and always. Just a reminder, because I saw the thing. Caitlin, are you recording this? Okay, excellent, because I wanted to make sure Chris got to see it. So we're going to do an activity, and I'm only going to give you the directions once. When I am done with the directions, Caitlin is going to put you into randomly sorted breakout rooms where you are going to have a conversation about this particular scenario, and then we will keep going. So these particular directions I can't repeat, but what I can tell you in advance is that when you get into your small groups, I'm going to ask that you not work with any other group. I'm going to ask that you not Google or use other resources, but I'm going to ask that you just use the lived experiences of the people that are in your small group to solve a problem. So you don't have to share anything about your own life, you just have to solve a problem. In this particular scenario, I am also at some point going to pull you all back together into a large group, which if we were doing in this person is my favorite part, which is called freeze. I used to say stop, and people would have a heart attack and cheat. But if I say freeze, you stop the activity, but you can still cheat and there's no heart attacks. Safety first. So when we say freeze, we're going to pull everyone back into a large group, and then I'm going to ask you to be silent. And what I mean by that is not just muted, but what I mean is I want you to be silent and have a raucous conversation inside of our own heads. When we're talking about judgments and assumptions, our lived experience has taught us what to do with those lived experiences, with those judgments and assumptions, but we often don't slow down enough to notice how our life has taught us to make these judgments and assumptions. So then once you have that conversation with yourself alone without any witnesses, then we will have a conversation about how does your lived experience, your conscious, unconscious bias, positive or negative bias, how does that impact your relationships with other people, your ability to serve other people? And by that, I mean patients, cohort members, people in the grocery store, people online, people in your family. So that's kind of the general plan for the day. So that hopefully was enough of a buildup, enough of a buildup for you to, one, get pen and paper or a device to take a screenshot. And my texting number, again, is 202-670-4262, because you're probably going to have questions or something for me. You can also always use the chat room. Okay, so are you ready for the directions that I am not going to repeat? Can I get thumbs up? Excellent, just sign of life. Excellent day. So here are the directions that I'm not going to repeat. There is a storm. Dun, dun, dun. There are 14 people stuck on a roof. Ah! And you have a boat. That boat holds 10 people. I am the mayor. I don't want to make this decision, so I am giving it to you, your small group, which is the city council. You need to develop a solution to this particular problem during the storm with the boat that holds 10 people. So Caitlin is about to zap you into your breakout rooms, but before she does that, this is the information that we know about the 10 people. So this is the picture that I would be taking a screenshot of if I were you. So you have a 330-pound person, an illegal alien, 15-year-old committed twice for robbery, welfare recipient of 15 years, a feminist, an epileptic, a drag queen, a pregnant Black woman, Jehovah's Witness, person disfigured by fire, a Korean market owner, an HIV positive person who continues to have sex, a Hasidic Jew, and a person carrying life savings. So you're going to go into your small groups. That is your city council. You're going to develop a solution to this problem. Okay? Caitlin, send them into their small groups. And I'll put my number into the chat while y'all are there. Excellent. I think that if you want to put, is it Zaris? Is that right? Oh, Caitlin, you're muted. I think you need to move her into a breakout group because I think it put both of us into a breakout group. Perfect.
Okay.
Oh, good job.
I only made up breakout room 7 to put you in because it was going to randomize you to to some other group otherwise.
Oh, very smart.
Right? But then it didn't do that because I am smart.
Yeah, I can't get my mouse to work. I think I have too many windows open.
That's a thing.
It is totally a thing. Okay, so in 3 minutes or so, we can do this two ways. One is, well, you're the boss because I'm not the boss. So you can either jump around.
Say that again more slowly, please.
Never.
All right.
202.
All right.
6,
so
4, 2,
I'm telling them they have 3 minutes.
No, not yet.
Not yet. Oh, I'm so ready. All right.
I know. So this, are you going to do, the best way to do it's probably the typing situation.
Oh yeah, I'm going to do the broadcast to all text box.
You could join each group and interrupt them and make the announcement, but then that can get cumbersome.
Nope, I'm not gonna.
And we're worried about time. So yeah, so then I would type in probably 2 more minutes. Because this is when you already know the activity. It's weird as I'm used to having to explain it, and I haven't done it online in 100,000 years. So
I'm doing it online a whole lot more is my guess.
I know. Okay, so
sorry.
Yes. Okay, so all caps emergency announcement.
Mm-hmm.
And then the storm waters are rising faster than we thought. You only have 2 minutes left. I'm messing up my slides too because I'm not used to using the slides.
The storm waters are rising faster.
Did you do the all caps emergency first?
I sure did.
Oh God, you're so fast.
You have 2 minutes left. Just tell me when to send.
Okay. Because then that has to go out. They have to read it. They have to notice it.
They have to get upset.
Right. Okay, then nowish. Sounds great.
Okay, here it goes. Broadcast.
Okay, so it's 7 after.
Yep.
Oh, you did it all at one thing.
Yeah.
That was not following directions.
What did I not do?
So emergency announcement, send, and then later.
Oh, well.
It builds up the drama.
Okay.
I don't think you've ever needed advice for such a thing.
That's That's 100% correct.
Okay.
This is being recorded, however. So, all right.
Yeah.
When do I bring them back in? You let me know.
7. So we got 2 more minutes.
Okay.
So I am also recording from that device in
Okay.
my over there. I'm recording it on my phone. So
Okay.
then I will have a behind the scenes view and your view, and then blur out the faces so that we can use it for some kind of promotional something.
Perfect. That sounds delightful.
Mm-hmm. You get what you pay for.
No comment. Thank you for doing this. I greatly appreciate it.
Oh yeah, 0 worries. Okay. Wait, 10 minutes. Okay, 7. 1 more minute.
Okay.
The waiting is the hard part.
So true. So the close all rooms gives them a 1-minute countdown, right? So just let's keep that in mind too.
Oh yeah, go ahead and send it. Good point.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
All breakout rooms will close in 58, 57. So they've gotten,
You don't actually have to count.
They're all going to be freaking out. Like none of them will jump out early is my guess.
Can't even wait.
Oh my gosh.
This is the panic mode.
They're going to be like, what have you done to us?
And to review, hard stop is what time?
I mean, 45.
45, right? So
yeah, I realize that's shorter than you normally.
No. Welcome back. Come on back. We're just waiting on other people. Sorry about the emergency announcement. That pesky storm.
I tell you what.
Waiting on others to come back. Almost. Thanks for following directions, y'all. Here we go. Come on back. All right. Now they should all be like boom, 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 boom. Here they come. Great. Okay, welcome back.
Oh my God.
Okay. Welcome back.
Oh my God.
I hated that experience.
It was awful.
No. Okay. You're totally welcome. Okay, so this is the equivalent of me saying freeze. So first, I am a trained professional. There is a reason behind everything and it will become clear. But what I'm going to ask you to do is to mute yourself, because this is when you are going to have a raucous conversation inside your own head. Okay? So I know that you are very mad at me right now, and that is why we are doing this online. So you can't even come at me. But there is a reason, I promise. Okay? Now, what is fascinating to me is that over my 20 years of doing diversity or social justice related work, I cannot get people to pay attention to what is happening in their own heads. Hardly ever. So what ends up happening is that we want to have a conversation about what is happening in our heads, but we're not having a conversation about what we are doing with what is happening in our heads. So we need to have that conversation first. So anal retentive people in the room, I know who I'm talking to. I will tell you the answers, so just relax. But what I want you to do is freeze in this moment. If you are feeling frustrated, you are nailing it. If you're not feeling frustrated, you are also nailing it, because you need to have a very raucous conversation with yourself. In order to talk about judgments and assumptions, to get to conscious and unconscious bias that is both positive or negative, and how that actually impacts what we do, what I want to do is focus on how very typically these groups, any group, not just your group, I wasn't even in your group, but I guarantee you, you are a human being, and this is probably what you did. So I want to talk about the hows of how people are making these decisions so that we can get that out of the way. Because the actions behind our judgments and assumptions is one piece that usually distracts us from getting, almost like an onion, getting to how our lived experience has shaped the stories that we write about other people. My main emphasis in my work is that it's not about not making judgments and assumptions, because your education and your experience is important for that, and we like to feel safe and prepared. But what's important is to recognize that you do make judgments and assumptions that limit your ability to serve and connect and build relationships with other people. So it's not writing a story. It's recognizing that you do, and then printing it out triple space with extra wide margins so that you are curious and generous and authentic and vulnerable in seeking edits to the story that you are writing. That is my main goal. So to get to that place, please just trust the process. Here we go. So I told you that there were 14 people stuck on a roof. There's a storm. You had a boat that had 10 people. As the mayor, I deflected responsibility down to the city council. This happens all the time because I'm going to go play golf now. You're in charge of the yucky stuff. Bye-bye. So then I leave. So then the city council has to make a decision. So inevitably what ends up happening, I did not say anybody has to die, but we are pretty catastrophic in nature. So we figure out who are the best people to murder. That is actually not in the directions, but let's not get too technical. So what is fascinating to me is that with these obscure directions that I don't repeat, and it's not actually about who you put in the boat. I don't care who you put in the boat, although I'm about to tell you who you probably put in the boat. What I think is fascinating is that we get to some Armageddon Will Smith movie here, right? Like where the world is coming to an entire end. And we've suddenly had enough time to do a resource inventory to determine we have one boat available that held 10 people. But if it's Armageddon or the end of the world, we would also need to be in that boat. So right now with COVID-19, we keep hearing that we're all in the same boat. No, we're in different boats, but we're in the same storm. But here's the reality. If you pictured Armageddon but didn't rescue yourself or the mayor, then what we're actually doing is often called service learning or community service, where we somehow are absolved from the problem, but those people over there, they're the ones that are in problem. They probably can't make this decision for themselves, so let me help. So then we give them our one little resource, but we're still comfortable to protect them from Armageddon. And then we start sorting out the 14 as to who would get on the boat and who wouldn't get on the boat. So we can play ethics questions, right? Like people who were on the roof and not in the boat, they're the ones that survived. Everyone in the boat capsized and they died, right? Oh, now you're feeling really mad at me because you were super excited about saving certain people because we build like alliances and our favorites and those kind of things. It could also be the case that when we are solving this particular problem, how we have this conversation, how we engage is exactly the same, no matter the group, no matter the education level or what's going on. There are 5 different processes that people tend to choose. First one is morally good, morally bad. So you got 10 people and 4 people basically, right? When the emergency announcement happens, we're like panicked. We just start narrowing it down to those 4 people because you got to finish. Says who? I digress. Morally good and morally bad people is usually the first starting place of the conversation. Usually we're pretty polite. Sometimes we're pretty opinionated. Usually someone steps up. Usually someone steps back. Just notice that might be a pattern of how you show up. So we don't actually know who is a good person, who is a bad person. We don't know any of that kind of stuff, right? At all. After that, we might possibly then look for volunteers. So I call this the pageant method. So maybe we need more information, or like, I'm not God, so how am I supposed to be able to determine it? Or you want to seek like more information. The more information you have, the harder decision it would be. And I think it's important to say, I'm not God, who am I to make these decisions? You put the pregnant Black woman in the boat almost instantaneously, but you didn't do it for health reasons or medical reasons or something like that. You did it because she's a coupon, because it's like buy one, get one free. That is not a morally good or morally bad reason, nor is that actually soliciting more information from her. It's actually just writing a story about her. So of course she went in the boat. Plus, I said the word diversity training, so you know that person has to get in the boat or Jess is going to come for me, right? This is what happens with diversity trainings. We have to get past this to actually have a conversation with ourselves. So the volunteer pageant method just makes things more complicated. The third method is creative outside of the box thinkers. I will admit the first time I ever did this activity, this was totally me. Creative outside of the box thinkers, you are the ones that were like, why limit it to 10? Let's create a swimming schedule or employ a rope or a helicopter, a Pegasus. That's it. A Pegasus will come in and swoop us all away to safety. It'll be amazing. So what ends up happening, creative box thinkers, listen hard here. You were spot on. I didn't say there could be no Pegasus. What is the plural of Pegasus? The Pegasi? I did not say Pegasi could not be used. But what ends up happening, us creative outside of the box thinkers are so used to being shut down that somebody else is like, wait, we're in an emergency. We have to kill people. We don't have time for a Pegasus. So then me, and evidently Amelia at least, because I got a thumbs up, we go stand in the corner with our Pegasus like, okay, we'll just go kill people. I'll just stand here with my Pegasus, right? But what ends up happening with budget cuts, or let's take really stressful situations that the two presenters at the beginning actually talked about, is that sometimes you have to get creative. You have to think outside of the box, and you're spot on. So how are you going to hold on to being right without actually just getting silenced and put into the corner? So that's number 3. Then the academic. I completely admit that I have been guilty of the academic. The academic teaches the classes or has taken the classes and is like, don't you know about intersectionality and simultaneity? Let me explain. The Korean market owner is also a drag queen and has epilepsy and also is carrying their personal life savings. Therefore, there are only 10 people on the roof and they all fit on the boat. No, I actually did say there were 14 people on the roof. But oftentimes what happens is we have access to more education or language or big fancy vocabulary words. So we change the rules to use the information that we have so that we can win. And in doing that, you make other people feel stupid because they didn't think of it. And that's actually not how you play the game. More education should open conversations, not shut them down. So the academic does not win either. And then last but not least, the semi-blind social justice. So what often happens here when I do it in person, there's little slips of paper that you move around. So perhaps in your conversation, you said, you know what, we should just randomly choose. We should just, randomly pick, everybody pick one, we'll figure it out, we'll go from there. But you didn't randomly choose from all 14. At most, it was 13 because the pregnant Black woman, remember her, you put her on the boat almost instantaneously. So then you might be randomly choosing from at least 13. But why does that positive bias benefit that one person? As a larger person, I am often asked if I am pregnant. Sometimes out of polite chivalry, people will offer me their subway seats or something because I'm pregnant. I take that seat because New York is hot. And then they are trapped underground with me to talk about why body image and they can't touch my stomach, why that's not allowed. That happens on the subway, but I got their seat. So if those are the typical hows, if I used to do this activity and then now we would have the conversation about how did you do this. But the truth is, I don't care how you did this, but you should. You should care how you did this. Where did you start? When someone else was at a different place in one of these 5, you probably did some combo of this. What was your reaction to a different way of making this decision that ultimately is just different ways of you being the mayor and distancing yourself from the responsibility of having to make this choice? Or justifying your choices because of your own identities, your own lived experience, or people that you know. It's really important to understand that your lived experience will also come to bear for a few of the people, but not for all of them because you don't always know all of them. So that is where you can then begin to open up from how does your lived experience work? How does your conscious and unconscious bias show up? When is it positive and when is it negative? And how does that impact your ability to serve other people, relate to other people, and deepen relationships? So we can't get to the conversation I want to have now until we get past and past and past these other layers where we're usually a little bit more comfortable engaging in these conversations because we like to think of ourselves as winning and being right. So truth be told, you're going to do this right and you're going to win if you realize this had nothing to do with the boat at all. None of these people were harmed. No one got it, unless you got some kind of like finger cramp from typing, nobody was harmed. So what I want to do while you're still being silent to me, but raucous conversation with yourself, is I want to go through the 14 people as quickly as possible, and I want to flip them. For me, there's a noise in my head that happens that it almost sounds like one of those dog training clickers, is that I start with the story that I have, and then I want to give you information that could be a completely different story. And I just want you to practice and notice where your story starts and what elements of a story could be different. What's based on your lived experience? What's based on your habitual stories or stereotypes that you write about this limited information? And then what is different? And if you can practice that, that literally is the start of what is referred to as cultural humility. So that when you are working in the medical field and you are able to bring all of your experience, all of the wealth of knowledge you have to each patient, and then put it to the side and have a one-on-one conversation with this human being who is picking and choosing what information to disclose to you, because they probably have their own trust issues or their own like decisions they have to make about what about their story or their life they're going to share, but you also have to interpret that. That one-on-one conversation puts your experience slightly to the side so that you can check in with it, but you're also listening to this one individual. To do cultural humility, you have to start somewhere. So that is why I love this activity. So we're going to practice with these 14 rando people that I came up with, which is there's a reason for all of them. But I want you to pay attention. Where did your story start? Where did it shift and change? We'll try and go through these as quickly as possible. So I started with a pregnant Black woman. I already told you that she usually gets saved out of practice because it's a diversity training and you don't want me to get in trouble, or as a coupon, buy one, get one free. What is fascinating to me about the coupon is that the 330-pound person doesn't necessarily count as a pregnant person, although that could happen. Usually what happens to the 330-pound person, they either float alongside the boat because they're buoyant, right? That's way to prescribe some humanity to a human. Or there's like some kind of circumference issue where people are worried about space because suddenly you're now an interior designer of an emergency boat. Or physics, you think that it could be like a good anchor during giant waves or something. But at the root of it, it's actually a great example of what is referred to as the white imagination, is that because it just says 330-pound person, you pretty much pictured a fat bastard kind of character from the Austin Powers movies. That's a 330-pound obese white dude with like chicken bits stuck in his skin folds. And you're like, nope, they're dead. And that's fine, because we usually say non-judgmental things like they have no will to live, so just kill them anyway. So that's what we would call one, white imagination, because we default to all of these white male cisgender heterosexual privileged identities when it just says 330-pound person, unless you or your lived experience has experience with somebody not fitting all of those, or we just judge them as not valuable. And then that was an easy decision. Next, the illegal alien. I use this language on purpose because if I say an undocumented person, it leads to a very different conversation. But if I say an illegal alien, no matter where I am in the country, it will immediately generate a stereotype. And then through that stereotype, people are like, they can swim. So what's fascinating to me about that is that if we have this undocumented person problem, I'm using air quotes, coming in from Mexico across a desert, they're not swimming. And there's more undocumented people coming in from Canada than there is from Mexico, but we don't think of Canadians as not white people. So then we don't link immigration, refugee status, and racism together from Canada. So it only comes in from Mexico. Think about that and what that means when you're writing a story about who you're going to rescue from a fictitious storm in a fictitious boat. 15-year-old committed twice for robbery. I would ask you first if you pictured a man person or a woman person, if you pictured a white person or a not white person, if they were innocent or they were guilty. Now, paying attention to that little switch in your head, for me, when I first did this activity, if they were stealing Sudafed because their grandmother's Medicaid ran out, I would totally save them. What a nice person. If they were stealing Sudafed to make meth, I would totally kill them. Because I have a bias. That is when you stumble into it. What a fun activity. Welfare recipient for 15 years. Some people immediately go to, they need to get a job. When the reality is that there are a lot of full-time employed people still receiving welfare because we don't actually pay people a living wage. This 15-year-old, or could be a 15-year-old who's been on welfare for 15 years and they're not legally allowed to work in most states. That is also an option. What did you picture? And can you picture something else? Can you flip it to a different story? The feminist, this is particularly fun if I'm in the room, but maybe it worked online too, is that usually if you had a man in your group, they're like, oh, we got to put the feminist on the boat or she is going to come for us. So what's fascinating is that I was raised in Texas. Feminist was a bad word. I didn't identify as a feminist until I read a book and knew what it was, and now I do. That's how that works. So what ends up happening is that the feminist is, of course, a white lesbian in a broom skirt holding some kind of quinoa casserole. So that's the stereotype that comes up. So then somehow or another we get very nervous when we get to the Jehovah's Witness and the Hasidic Jew, because we don't really always know what that means unless we have personal experience. So we just think they're super religious. They're going to be arguing because that's literally what we see about different extreme versions of different religions, is only arguing. So then the feminist with her casserole, they could be on the roof mediating that conversation, but now you're up to 3 people on the roof. So then things get a little dicey. Why do we immediately go there? I don't know. What I think is interesting is that the weirdest thing I've ever heard about the Hasidic Jew is that I have been told they have a relationship with Jesus and are ready to die. For the record, that may or may not be true, but seems unlikely. But we write a story that makes us feel better, and then from feeling better, we can decide whether or not their life has value. The Jehovah's Witness, people picture tambourines early in the morning. That's usually more Hare Krishna than Jehovah Witness, but we don't know. We don't care because those are facts and details. Blah. I will keep to my stereotypes. Thank you very much. The epileptic, people don't always know what that word means. Now, y'all probably have a better chance of knowing what epileptic or having epilepsy means. But what I have noticed is when you don't know what a word means, you just kill them. The most popular question about the epileptic is that a new word for being gay? Which also is a fun fact that heterosexuality and epilepsy are not mutually exclusive and could also happen. But what is fascinating to me is when you don't know what a word means, when people seem to not know what a word means, where they immediately go is it's some trendy word for being gay, or they just don't even get there and they just kill them because they don't know what the word means. Drag queen usually is not seen as a whole person with a family or children or something, but they're like, you know what? This is a crisis. Who needs a good round of I Will Survive, right? Like entertainment on the boat, entertainment on the roof. Let's table the drag queen and see where we think the party needs to be. Then we get to the person disfigured by fire. Fascinating is that people don't always picture someone with an open wound that needs medical care. They almost always picture a scar, and that scar is usually on their face. Why? I'm going to have a whole different workshop on vanity, but that is a thing. So people often touch their face when they start talking about the person disfigured by fire, and they get rescued not for medical care, but because they need therapy. Just a lot of commentary here I'm not doing, but that ends up being very common as to what happens. The Korean market owner is my personal favorite because it's fun with grammar. Is it a Korean market owner, or is this person a Korean market owner? Please notice the difference. The first one obviously is a Korean man because women can't own their own businesses. Hello. So this Korean man owns a market, therefore is good at math, model minority stereotype, and good at business. So we should totally save them so that the free market economy can continue after Armageddon that magically didn't kill the city council or the mayor. Yes, save them. Or it's a Korean market owner, which is somebody who owns like a Dollar Tree that sells feather dusters and plastic stuff because they sell Korean goods. You either got hungry or pictured feather dusters, and you didn't go necessarily to math and business skills or the free market economy. Same 3 words, very different responses. The HIV positive person who continues to have sex is the only person who seems responsible enough to know their HIV status. And if they're continuing to have sex, a lot of times people assume this is very irresponsible behavior. So, not to pull a Bill Clinton, but what do we mean by sex? Do we mean oral sex? Do we mean masturbation? Do we mean protected sex? Do we mean like protected partner sex? Are they only having sex with other HIV positive people? All of a sudden, we have a lot of need to know about what this person is doing with their sex life, instead of the other 13 people we don't know their HIV status, let alone information about their sex life. Fascinating. It's like a little rabbit hole with just a few words. And then last but not least is the person carrying life savings. What does that mean? I am 46 years old. My life savings account has about $47 in it. Is that what you pictured? Probably not. You usually picture some very greedy person magically walking down the street like Santa Claus with a bag of gold bars over their shoulders, which most people don't do. So where did that image come from? Unknown. Maybe this is a homeless person who literally is walking down the street with everything they own, but that's usually not what we picture. So that's just a teeny tiny, very fast window into what happens with the 14 people. Now, why I think it's so important is to understand this is not about these particular individual 14 people. That's not what this is about. What this is actually about are the different stories, the different boxes that we put all of these 14 people in, because those 14 people are just teeny tiny representations of all of the lived experiences we have had that have resulted in a story that make us feel safe and prepared. And the story that results in us feeling safe and prepared could have a positive impact on someone else or a negative impact on someone else. And those stories are our responsibility. So I want you to just take a moment and think about what you did, how you did what you did. And then I'm going to ask for us to move beyond the boat. The activity is literally called Just Rescue, because what it really is about justice, not a boat. And what I mean by that is that I would like, in the time that we have left, to be able to have a conversation about what it means to actually incur a conversation, have a raucous conversation with yourself about what it means when your safety and preparation impacts your ability to relate or serve other people around justice, equality, inclusion, and diversity. Because now we can have that conversation a little bit better than we could have 30 so minutes ago. So with that, I want to give you some prompts. I'm going to explain these prompts, and then I'm going to open it up into conversation. You get to pick and choose what you want to talk about. But I will tell you, if the comment starts with, in my group, on my boat, I don't care. Because it's not about the group dynamics. It's not about someone else in your group. It's not about the boat. But it's about you as an individual. I'm going to bump into you at a grocery store someday when we are allowed to go back to grocery stores and bump into people again. What you are bringing to that person, even a random stranger you may never see again, is my responsibility, is your responsibility. So that is a terribly easy, free thing to do. It can also be very, very hard to be self-reflective and take responsibility for our roles and our positive and negative bias. So what I want you to do is to think about these 4 prompts: easy, now, easy, hard, now, and promise. Think about what has been easy and hard. Yes, potentially about the activity, but just in the time that you were having a raucous conversation with yourself, what was easy and hard? When did you flip easily? And when were you like, no, I'm sticking to my story? When were you at now and promise? What I mean by that is, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do next? What promises do you have when you start thinking about your career, your family, your friends, online, things like that? That's what I mean by easy, hard, now, and promise. So you're welcome to text message me at the 202-670-4262 number now or later. You're also welcome to write it down and use it later. But what I'd like to do is kind of open this up into a conversation just to see if anybody has an easy hard that you want to share from a personal space, not a boat space. Thank you for being quiet. You can talk now. You can put it in the chat or you can unmute and share. Any easy or hards that you want to share?
Can you clarify on what you mean? I'm not following the easy hard. Like
Sure. Team Pegasus all the way. So just when reflecting, when having a conversation with yourself, was there something that was particularly easy for you? Or was there something that was particularly challenging or maybe even surprisingly challenging that you would want to share with the group?
Like ethically?
Sure. I mean, I think bias is directly prejudice, discrimination. I think all of this is directly related to ethics. But most of the time we don't put those together. We keep them in very separate Tupperware containers. But the reality is that our lived experience is ruled by our moral code, and our moral code is guided by our ethical decisions, right? Like they're very linked together. Is that helpful?
I think like for me personally, the easy, like as soon as I saw, heard the directions and everything, like I guess my mind didn't even look at who was on the boat or on the roof at all. I didn't it just to me was 14 people. That was it. And to me, my thought was 10 people get on the boat, and if whatever 4 people can swim, attach them to the side, let them hang on, help them kick, whatever. And that, like, to me, that was the easy decision. There was no like, oh, I should pick this person over that person. I didn't even look at who was on the roof or on the boat, just because to me, I guess, I don't know if it's because being a healthcare worker, it was just get everybody who you possibly can. And the goal is being everyone to where they need to get to. And that was my thought on how to do it. So that was my easy thought.
Right. So your how was easy because you distance yourself from the people themselves.
Right.
Great. What was, you don't have to answer, you're not necessarily on the hot spot, but you're welcome to. That's all how related, which is super, except not what I asked. So what I want to know is what is easy and hard that happened up in here when I was going through the hows and then going through all 14 people when I was talking about the details of who these people were or could be, because I don't know, I typed them out. They're not even real people, but that's the part that I'm hoping to hear from folks. What was easy and hard up in here? Sure.
I found the hard part because it was just like these random people that we knew nothing about. So I was like, why does one person deserve to live more than another person? Like all we have here is like a 1, 2, 3 word description of a person. Like that doesn't define who they are or what they do or anything like that. So that was my initial thought was, wow, this is hard because like, what if the 15-year-old was stealing Sudafed to do meth and not stealing Sudafed for his grandma? So
right. And notice the 15-year-old is a man person.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Isn't it fascinating? Yeah?
Yeah.
Great. Anybody else want to share anything about the self-reflective process in your heads?
I guess the part of it for me was that I was thinking, like, if I was on this boat, how would I be categorized? It's so vague. It's like, would I be a nurse, or would I be a lady that yells at her kids 15 times a day? Or would I be someone that forgets to feed their dog before they go to work? Or, someone that visits old people once a week? Like, what would I be categorized as? And just like to select someone based on like one, like 3-word description, I feel like people are a lot more than that. And that's the part that got to me. Mm-hmm. It's like one of them's like a 330-pound person. And it's like, what if they're a doctor?
Right. Or an Olympic athlete,
That's
or
what I mean. So it's like, that's
tall,
the part that got
right?
to me.
Yeah. When, I don't know, I can't remember the names of the 2 people who presented or talked and shared their experiences, but when I came in, one of the things that I heard about was complete random strangers checking in with like, oh my gosh, you're a nurse, how's it going? But it's not personal. It's like disaster tourism, right? Of like, ooh, tell me all the gossip about the tragedies you're experiencing. I don't care about your life, right? Like that is the tourism piece, which is why the boat doesn't make sense. So then having a moment where you're like, wait a minute, this person has written 4 words about me and now they want to have this righteous conversation about the slip of paper. Like, I'm in here. Like, I'm actually trying to buy Fritos because I need some Fritos. When do I get to be a person? And when I get to be a person is the start of an ethical, moral conversation about how do we value living things, living people, living items different. And I bridge that out from just living humans, because in my work, I pretty much only just talked about humans. And then I married an environmental ethicist where like, when do trees have rights? When do animals have rights? When do plants have rights? When does an ocean have rights? When does the air have rights? And why do humans get rights first? And I was like, oh, damn, this is going to be a long marriage. I don't know. I haven't thought about the air, but what has rights, right? And that's a really important thing to be able to have a conversation about. Okay, so now and promise. Did anything come up that you want to share that you're going to do next or you'll do now, or a conversation that you need to have, or something you want to like engage with one of your group mates about? What kind of promises do you need to make, if any, that your cohort can actually like hold you accountable to? Because sometimes those come up when those of us that are not very good at self-reflection kind of do that the first time around. Then it comes in, now we're back into action mode. We need to do something. So what are you going to do next? What are you doing now? What kind of promises do you want to make about the stories that you write about other people?
I think the now, like for me, after like my initial figuring out the how and everything, I think that's something that like I personally need to do, is actually like have taken a look at all of the people. Like when I was doing it, I didn't, like I said, I didn't look at the people, but actually looking at that and determining like, what is my initial thought of each and every single person? Like how would I treat them? How would I pick it if I like in my own safe space in my mind were to not tell anyone and just think about my prejudice or my whatever it may be, like what I deep down to the core really would have picked, if it was just as simple as you really can only just pick 10 people and who are you going to leave? And I think that for me, that's something that I'm like, oh, I can't do it. I could never do it. But if I had to do it, and I think it's a learning opportunity to see like, oh, maybe I have a little bit of a prejudice here. Oh, maybe I feel a little bit worse for this person and not for that person, or whatever that is. And I think so for me, I need to focus on like identifying that I do make judgments and I do probably have prejudices that maybe I don't want to acknowledge or I push out of my head and what have you, but maybe just trying to like figure out what is that for me.
Yeah. And so that this doesn't seem like an extra thing that you need to do. I might not be using correct words for all of the different institutions, but I believe that is yet another reason that one charts things. So what has been going on with this person? What happened overnight? When you have like the staff meeting, when you have shift changes, right? Is that you're getting kind of the lowdown so that the next set of staff kind of know what's going on. But in those moments, that is when you and your team should be having a check-in of like, oh, wait a minute, hold on. What did you say about them? What are their family members like? Okay. So then you can tee up, here are the prejudices that I have that are negative. Here are the prejudices that I have that are positive. And I need to be conscious of them so that I can set them to the side and actually deliver good care, right? That's when you do that. This isn't an additive thing. And then one more, Rebecca put into the chat that possibly because of COVID, we got to like death and disaster. Fun facts, I have not done this activity in over a year, so it has nothing to do with COVID. Caitlin does it every single cohort. Nope, same response. So I'm curious, Caitlin, when we toss it back to you, how virtual and during COVID, this was similar or different, etc. Like maybe that's something you want to talk about. Rebecca also said, I'm promising to myself to do my best of self-reflecting after I take care of a patient. Is there something I can do different? Can I do it better? It's a great question. And then going back again to the two folks, when the person on the right was talking about getting relieved after someone had passed away, that they thought like, oh, okay, so now I get to go take a break because someone passed away. No, you've left that room, clean that slate, get back to work. And how do you manage the skills and the conversations that you have in your head with those positive and negative biases? Because you're not always given the time to do that. When I did some work in a children's emergency room outside of Chicago, south side of Chicago, one of the things that was fascinating to me is that they had a rule that every time a child died, you could take the next 3 hours off the floor. But because of bullying in the department, which is why I was brought in, nobody ever took those 3 hours because it was a perception of vulnerableness or a perception of weakness. And you also get used to people dying. But what about that one patient that you actually had a better relationship with, or you liked their family better, and then that person passes away? It might have a bigger impact on you. It might be the fourth one that day and you were fine, and all of a sudden you're not fine. We are responsible for that self-reflection. We're responsible for the pileup of what is going on. We're responsible for keeping the stories that we need to feel safe and prepared, but recognizing that that is a rigid structure that may not fit everybody else's reality. And then we need to leave room for edits. That is actually being responsible for our own selves and our own biases. So I had a couple of thought questions that I just wanted to toss out, if I can get my mouse to operate, that I think would be good for you to think about or to reflect on. You don't have to share here, but just to really kind of be reflective and to practice, not because of the boat, but because of your shift, because of the time you went to the grocery store, because of what just happened in your front lawn. These are very smart, hard questions I reflect on when I can feel myself getting charged up. So perhaps that'll be helpful. So with that, I will toss it back. Thank you so much.
Jess, thank you so much for joining us. That was such a treat. As she said, I have been running this exercise in nurse residency seminars since I first did it in a workshop that Jess ran, and what a treat to be able to have the inventor, originator, creator behind this really, really crucial conversation join us all the way from Northern California. So she got up early for us too. So thank you so much, Jess. It was so great to have you with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank
Yay.
you.
Thank you.
And that number is still, it's several messages up, but it's there up in the chat. She really means it. If you have questions or want to continue the conversation later, that is totally viable. I'm going to